There's a number you can calculate about your own church in the next 10 minutes that tells you whether you're in maintenance mode, growing steadily, or growing rapidly. Most pastors of plateaued churches have never run the math, and many have never heard the benchmark. We'll get to that number in about 6 minutes. Before we do, you need to know whether your church is positioned to act on what the number tells you. That's what these five signs are for. Each one is grounded in research or in a pattern I've seen consistently in over 40 years of ministry. I'm Bart Leger with Kingdom Impact Consulting. Let's get into it. Sign number one: you're willing to look honestly at the numbers. Here's why this matters. Church Answers data shows that since the pandemic, larger churches are operating at about 60% of their pre pandemic attendance, and smaller churches at about 80%. The trend is measurable even when it feels like a vague sense that something is off. The part most pastors miss is what's driving the drop. Most of the loss comes from people coming less often. The same families may still be part of the church, they're just showing up half as much as they used to. An active member used to mean someone who attended 2 or 3 times a week. It usually means someone who attends twice a month. That single shift changes how you read your numbers. Picture a church that used to have 200 people attending 4 out of 4 weeks. That's the way it used to be. Their average weekly attendance was 200. Take that same church with the same people, but lower attendance frequency to 2 out of 4 weeks, and the average weekly attendance becomes 100. The room feels smaller, and the budget will begin to feel tighter, even though the congregation is the same size. You can't fix what you won't measure, and Nelson Searcy puts it well when he says that what you see on any given Sunday is an illusion. The numbers tell you what your eyes can't. Try this. Pull your attendance records from the last 3 years and calculate your average frequency. If you've never tracked it, that's your first data point worth knowing. Sign number two: you genuinely want the church to grow and you've counted the cost. This is where many pastors get stuck. C. Peter Wagner, one of the most studied voices in church growth research, observed that he had never seen a vigorously growing church where the pastor didn't want growth. The pastor's desire showed up every time as a precondition for what followed. Wanting growth, though, means paying a price. Wagner described that price as moving from a shepherd model to a rancher model. A shepherd handles every visit and every counseling session personally, along with every wedding and every hospital call. A rancher makes sure all of that gets done, but through trained others, so the pastor's energy goes to leadership the church can't get anywhere else. Most pastors of small to mid sized churches are still trying to be the shepherd at a size where it's already breaking them. If your church is past 150 in regular attendance and you're still doing every hospital visit yourself, you've hit a real ceiling, even if it feels like you're just simply being faithful. Try this. List the 5 things you did last week that someone else in your church could have done. But be honest about it. That list is your starting point for sign number two. Before we move on, the number I mentioned is coming up in just a few minutes, so stay with me. Sign three: a few key leaders see what you see. Research on church revitalization is pretty consistent here. Pastors who try to lead change alone almost always fail. Tom Rayner, who has studied thousands of churches through Church Answers, points out that established churches resist change as a default. The resistance is a feature of how established institutions work, and faithful church members will still push back on changes they don't understand. So the pastor's job is finding 2 or 3 people in the church who already see what you see, then leading the change together with them. Trying to absorb all the resistance alone is what wears pastors down and stalls revitalization efforts. Let me be clear about who those people are. They aren't your loudest critics, and they aren't the people who agree with everything you say. They're the ones who love the church and will tell you the truth even when others won't. They're also willing to spend some of their own credibility helping you lead a difficult conversation. If you can name two or three people who fit that description, write those names down. Those are the people you build with. And if you can't name them yet, that's also useful information, and building those relationships becomes your work over the next 6 months. Sign 4, your church is willing to try one small experiment. Here's the number I promised you. Nelson Searcy, who has trained thousands of pastors through Church Leader Insights, uses a simple ratio for first-time guests. 3 first-time guests per 100 regular attenders means a church is in maintenance mode. 5 per 100 means it's growing steadily. 7 per 100 means it's growing rapidly. You can run the math on your own church right now. Take your average number of first-time guests per Sunday over the last 6 months, multiply by 100, then divide by your average regular attendance. That number is your ratio. Most plateaued churches I work with sit below 3, often well below. And that's a real problem, but it's also one you can measure and address. Here's where the willingness question comes in. When your ratio is low, the answer usually isn't a full overhaul. The most useful first move is one small change tied to reaching more people, like maybe a revised guest follow-up process, a better approach to how guests are welcomed before the service starts, or maybe adding a single small group on-ramp. Tom Rainer's research on leading change in established churches says it directly. Members need time to discuss proposed change in both formal and informal settings, and the Monday morning coffee shop conversations matter as much as the formal meetings. Slow communication kills change efforts faster than the change itself. Try this. Calculate your ratio and name one small change that could move it up. Then identify the settings where the conversation about that change needs to happen before any decision is made. Sign 5. You've started looking for help. This one's pretty simple. You're watching this video, and that's your sign. Pastors who attempt revitalization in isolation have lower success rates than pastors connected to coaches, peer cohorts, or experienced consultants. Church Answers, Church Leader Insights, and Lifeway Research all publish data showing the same pattern. The pastors who get connected tend to make progress. The ones who stay isolated tend to decline along with their churches. You don't have to hire a consultant to act on this. The point is to end the isolation that lets the problems compound without anyone naming them. That can mean reading a book that addresses what you're facing, joining a pastor cohort, or having lunch with a pastor whose church is growing and asking honest questions about what's working for them. Try this. Name one specific resource, person, or step you'll take this month to keep moving in this direction. Then put it on your calendar before the day ends. Here's the takeaway. If all 5 signs describe your church, your readiness is high. And the question now is, what are you going to do first? If 3 or 4 describe your church, you're closer than most pastors realize. The missing signs are worth the attention. If only 1 or 2 describe your church, you're not necessarily stuck for good. It may mean it's just a little bit too early. Readiness grows over time, and the signs that do apply can pull the others along. About the ratio. If your number is below 3, don't panic. Most churches in Plateau land there. Your job now is to use the number as a starting line and figure out what would help it move. Wherever you find yourself, the next step is the same. Don't try to figure this out alone. I've put together a free guide that walks through these 5 signs in more detail with reflection questions you can use with your leadership team. The link is in the description. If you'd like to talk through what you're seeing in your specific church with someone who's worked with pastors in your situation, my discovery call is also linked below. No cost, No pressure, just a conversation about your church. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.